Cleopatra VII ruled ancient Egypt for almost 3 decades. She was queen by aged 18 and amassed an empire. At the height of her power, she controlled virtually the entire eastern coast of the Mediterranean. So I decided to sit down and channel with Queen Cleopatra around what we need to do to embody this queen energy. What are the hallmarks, the energetics of this queen energy? And this is what she shared with me. The first thing she shared with me is that the queen reigns from the heart. Otherwise, she is not a queen, she is simply a figurehead. She also shared that queendom or queenhood is vastly misunderstood in the modern world. We've taken it to be kind of like that sassy energy, being outspoken, being assertive. And she said that aspects of this are part of the queenly energy, but by far and above, the most important aspect of the embodiment of this queen energy is heart-centeredness. So what does it mean to rule from the heart? So what Cleopatra shared with me is that it means to let empathy lead, and that human relating and human relations take precedence over personal power, and it means the release of the ego from within the leadership context. It's an emboldened ownership over one's compassionate nature and the compassionate acceptance of all aspects within the self, which might be experiencing a sensation of shame. So she's able to hold this frequency, and I started getting images of kind of like pyramids with people coming and knocking on these giant doors and pretty much queuing outside, because when she's holding that frequency of compassionate holding of shame, she's essentially welcoming into her chambers the aspects of self that feel like they shouldn't belong, or feel outcast, or feel like they ought not to be the way that they are, but instead they arrive and are met with compassion and a sense of an open heart and a welcoming, a warmth, where maybe these people are feeling like aspects of them within themselves they're leaving outside because of their own sense of disowning parts of themselves. When they enter the Queen's chamber, those parts of them become accepted and receive a warmth that they don't even experience within their own selves, let alone outside in the wider society. So the way that she shared this is this heart-centeredness truly melts that soul meeting human inner conflict that all of us go through in some way. It just simply melts away that conflict within whenever they're in the presence of this queen-like, embodied queen-like energy. She then went on to say that this heart-centeredness, this compassionate embrace of all parts of the self, this dissolution of shame, in order for her to bring this into the wider collective, she first needs to move through that process within herself, so that then she's able to embody that energy and radiate it outwards. So Cleopatra said that she simply cannot emphasize this enough, that it has to be something that happens internally first before it can be this queen-like energy is able to radiate outwards. So as I was going deeper and deeper into this with her, what she was saying is that it's not a one-time thing, that we're dissolving these inner conflicts and dissolving shame through the heart and heart-centeredness just this one time, or when we identify this one thing. It's something that we're doing over and over and over again, hundreds of times, possibly thousands of times throughout the day, when we are at a choice point of being heart-centered and dissolving inner conflicts and inner shame, and moving things into not belonging, that we envelop that within the heart, and then it's dissolved from that heart-centeredness. She said that so few beings in our space-time on the planet right now are actually moving through this process, and as they're not moving through this process, they still feel like their queen energy is being radiated and is serving the world. And Cleopatra is pretty firm with this, that she said it's really not. She said, this channel is for luminary leaders, this YouTube channel is for luminary leaders, is it not And what she was saying is, how can you expect to be illuminating others if the pressure of false selves, of false identities, of false stories are continuing to enmesh you and wrap themselves around you and essentially grasping and choking you from within? It seems like a fairly simple concept, a simple idea, it's a simple practice to implement, but so few people are actually efficaciously implementing these practices so that they are embodying this queen energy. The implementation of it is not actually very valued in society, and it's actually fairly rarely practiced to the high levels and the high degree that are required for the queen-like energy to actually start coming through and being experienced by the self and by others. Cleopatra says this heart-centeredness is the absolute foundational principle. Everything that flows beyond this principle, if this principle is not there, simply is moot, it doesn't matter. And nevertheless, this next point absolutely must follow the heart-centered embodiment in order for the queen energy to start to come through. And the next point is that the queen, the true queen, listens first. So the way that Cleopatra phrases this is that the queen, she stops running her mouth, she stops enforcing her agenda, she stops sprouting opinions and generally placing her agenda over the consciousness and the free will of other people. And instead, she listens truly, lovingly, wholly, intently, with all aspects of herself, which will in fact be a lot easier as she's consciously integrating the shamed and displaced parts of herself, so that as she's listening with more parts of who she is. And the funny thing is that Cleopatra shared within the context of this wet state of being that she's now embodying, she's not trying to fix anything. She's not trying to plan anything. She's not trying to strategize anything. She's not trying to look for the flaws and look for the areas that need to, like almost like a machine finding bolts and parts that have fallen apart and looking for how she can tweak them and fix them. She's not doing any of that, because we have to remember, as the queen first and foremost starts from the heart energy, the heart energy isn't in a space of trying to fix anything. It is seeking a resolution, but there's this inherent wisdom that lies within the heart that knows when someone is truly embodied in the heart, they're listening from the heart with all parts of themselves, that as that energy is radiating outwards and outwards and outwards, what happens is that there's a bubbling up or a rising up of all aspects of pain and displaced parts of self and struggles and problems and all the things that arrive in the listening and the articulation from the other of what's present, what's real, what's a matter of course for them in that process. So it's rising, 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 and along with the pains and along with all aspects that are brought into conscious attention and conscious light, the solution is trusted to arise within the expression of all of that pain and struggle and suffering. So the queen fundamentally knows this within the depths of her bones. So it's intuitive, it's felt, and it's a simple knowing that as she's connected so deeply with this universal source, she knows its law, that with the rising and full expression of all aspects of self, of all parts that have not been belonging, that are suddenly being welcomed and held and brought back into the fuller part of self, that all that needs to be done is simply going to bubble up and rise with that. So she's trusting that as she is simply in the space of being heart-centered and completely listening with all that she's already integrated within herself. This is the next aspect of the true embodiment of the queen energy, and that is the integration with the whole. The queen is not happy to rest. She's not happy to move forward with anything until there is a cohesion, a speaking of all parts of the whole with one another, and then there's an agreement between the all. So the queen will never sacrifice any part for the whole or for any one course of action, because she realizes inherently that all aspects of the part are part of the whole. So no one part can be left behind if there is going to be a whole at all. So there's always a unified direction, a unified decision, a unified course of action, with all parts being in cohesion with all other parts within the self, or if we're talking outwardly, within the collective. If there is a part that is sacrificed, it does so willingly, so that there is a cohesive direction between all aspects, all parts, that is going towards a whole agreed consensus direction. As I was tuning in with Cleopatra around this queen energy, I was thinking, okay, so heart-centeredness, listening, making sure there's cohesion within the whole. Surely this is something that all rulers or all leaders would be embodying as they move forward, even if they were a king energy. I asked her it would be helpful for her to share the differences between queen energy and king energy, so that we can more deeply understand what the essence is of queen energy. So the king energy in its most sovereign state has a more holding sensation, a more holding frequency. So it's almost as if you can feel the energy enveloping you and holding you from behind in some way. So he's more interested in knowing boundaries, defining boundaries, and upholding a healthy separation from other, where that separate identity is upheld and enforced. Queen energy, whilst she does do this, she's less focused, and she doesn't sort of more directly and consciously with directed attention uphold this kind of healthy separation. So what you'll see with queen energy as separate from king energy, or distinct from king energy, is that she's more interested in healthy relating across borders rather than holding really strong, firm boundaries like the king energy. What Cleopatra shared here around this is that the boundaries very naturally become very strongly upheld simply through celebrating. She's seeing, she's listening, she's tuning in, she's becoming aware of the unique identity of other, and celebrates and upholds that. So from that space, a boundary very naturally is seen and held, and energetically remains present without having to consciously hold it the way the king energy might. So what happens with this queendom, this queen energy, is that there's this healthy flow between boundaries and across boundaries and borders. And so what does this mean for our own inner queen energy, which we're inviting to very naturally rise here? It means that all parts of ourselves are seen, are upheld, are celebrated for the unique gifts that they bring to our broader ecosystem of self. So then there's this very natural flow of all parts of ourselves into other parts of ourselves, and then with this kind of cross-pollination, or this cross-blending of all parts of ourselves, it's almost like the sum of all these parts creates a greater strength within us, and this greater unification, and much like a lattice, when all parts come together, if there's holes, then there's a weakness in the overall structure. Whereas when we allow this blend of all parts of ourselves, nothing shamed, everything belongs, there's this cross-border flow, all parts of ourselves start working together, and when all parts are unified, there's a strength in the overall ecosystem of self. So this sense of interconnectedness is very upheld in queendom, according to Cleopatra's insights and downloads that she shared with me. Whereas in kingdom, borders are upheld, they are enforced, and very importantly, I sensed from Cleopatra, is that they are respected. So from a king energy, respect is a huge, huge thing. Whereas this really poignant, embodied, heart-centered, tuning in belongingness is welcomed in the queendom. So what Cleopatra shared is that she could just keep repeating all these various ideas in different concepts in different ways for us to all get all different angles for what this queen energy looks like. And what she wanted to emphasize, without having to over explain everything, is that this queen energy, it starts on the inside and then it emanates outside. The queendom is a state of being that is manifested within oneself, and then by extension it's radiated outwards into others, into community, into the wider queendom. So she said that this queendom isn't something that we can artificially produce, now that we know the steps. So, you know, maybe we might practice being a little bit more heart-centeredness. We might tune in more to the heart. Maybe try our best from the heart space to start listening more, putting our own agenda aside, really tuning in and listening to whatever is within us, or if we're listening to someone else, really listening to what they're sharing with us. But what Cleopatra shared here is that this heart-centeredness, this listening, isn't just one moment or even a set of moments that we might practice. It's actually a state of constant existence that we embody moment after moment after moment. What she was saying here is that it's a space that we can tune into and step into hundreds, if not thousands of times per day, step by step by step. Because the queen energy, it can dip in, but then maybe the ruler energy wants to come in and take over, or the controller energy wants to come in and displace the queen energy, or the dictator energy wants to come in and then the queen-like energy is pushed aside. And what she said is that, can we not see the emanations of this queen-like, ruler-like, controller-like, dictator-like energies that are seen across borders, across countries, across communities? It's an emanation that we're seeing over and over again within the world. So it's not that we're short on seeing the manifestation of these different aspects of self and what it looks like when the healthy queen energy is at leadership within the self and therefore within the wider community. So Cleopatra was sharing to really source these qualities from within and then practice the expression of them moment by moment over and over again, because all of those opportunities are not short within our lives. Continuously source these energetics from within, because masculine and feminine energetics are the foundational principles, the absolute building blocks of every single aspect of creation. So we're not short on the stuff that's available for us to practice on. So the invitation is for us to do that practice, to continue over and over again, to practice it so that we can begin and continue to embody the purest, wholest, sovereign sense of our queen energy. So that was some channeling that I received from Cleopatra around the embodiment of our queen energy. Now, I feel like the best next video for you to watch here is my Surrender to the Feminine video, which is the first of a 4-part series that I did into the feminine spiral of creation. So I will link that video over here, and I really think you should check that out next and possibly watch the entire series, because it will give you a huge insight and really complement this queen-like energy that you're going to begin to bubble and rise to the surface and embody from here on out. So I'll link that over here and I will see you over there.